un método y una mapa. Las dos cosas son muy importantes para avanzarnos, para seguir adelante hacia la fluidez. Estas cosas nos apoyan en hacerlo. These are two things that I think are really, really important to advance towards speaking fluency. And without them, my belief, if it's based on my own personal experiences, you're likely to struggle. So we're going to dig into this today to talk about where you are in your path to fluency and how to get there. My name is Scott Bryan, and again, I have tried over the years to attain fluency, working without a method, without a map, just fits and starts of good intentional effort, sometimes very extreme, right? I spent a summer in Spain, 2 summers in Spain, long ago, didn't succeed. I had some success here and there, but nothing that got me to true speaking fluency where I can communicate, much like I'm doing ahora mismo en español. Just switch out different words. And I genuinely believe this understanding where I was in the process, a realistic assessment of, okay, the path to fluency, where am I? And then what do I need to do to advance to that next level? And then taking this incremental approach to get there is what helped me succeed. And we're going to talk all about that in today's video. So as we get started, I'm going to remind you that we're combining 2 elements here, 2 elements that I've covered in other videos that are on my channel. If you subscribe or look at my YouTube channel, you'll find these here. I haven't categorized. I think it's easy to follow along. I don't like to do a lot of self-promotion, but if you're interested in this topic, I think you'll find it quite useful. This is around a category I have called the path to fluency. It's a chance to step back and really think about what we're trying to do here and how we're going about it. I genuinely believe this concept is super important to set proper expectations and essentially allow you to put the right things in place to help you advance. I know I have done this in the past, throughout my life, just fits and starts of like focused, hardcore effort on learning Spanish and trying to achieve some level of fluency and have failed. And I believe in a large part it's because I didn't really have a solid plan, a realistic solid plan. I didn't know where I was in that path, etc. That's what this is about. Okay, so again, I'm not going to repeat these things, but I am going to go into depth on each of the stages of fluency and then the supporting pillars needed to advance to the next stage. That's the way this video will be structured. So again, very quickly, the 6 stages are A1, A2, those are the beginner stages, B1, B2, intermediate stages, C1, C2, advanced stages. That's the path. Everybody moves from one stage to the next in sequential order. This video will be structured, focused on beginning stages and what we need to be studying there, intermediate stages, what the focus is there, and then the advanced stages, and of course, the focus of that. When we talk about pillars and things to study, there are 4 pillars. 1, 2, 3, 4. Foundational study, translation practice, conversation practice, and dialogue with others. Again, so what we will do today is think about each of these stages. Start with the beginner, which pillars you should be focused on. And we'll move to the next and to the next. And you hopefully will have a good feel for what this is all about. Beginning stage, etapa número 1. This is where we start studying the language. This is where we're getting underway. These are levels A1 and A2, and look, it is what it says it is. Imagine you're starting A1. That means you know nothing about Spanish. I mean, literally nothing. And then you progress to more of a tourist level of understanding, of knowledge, and of speaking. So what are we focused on here? We're focused on study. That is pillar 1. Pillar 1, I've got 4 pillars that I'm going to discuss in each of these stages. So for the beginner stage, your focus is pillar 1. Pillar 1 is study, foundational study. You cannot speak something you do not know. And knowledge acquisition is key. It's not something that I address in my methodology of what I do. And the reason for that, quite simply, is I don't want to reinvent the wheel. There is so much incredible resources available to you to gain that knowledge, be it online, in person, a myriad of options there. But your focus, which pillars do you apply to this initial beginner stage? It's pillar one. Pillar one is foundational study. Now, can you apply pillar two here, which is translation practice? You can, particularly if your goal is speaking, but it's going to be very basic and very simple, right? Because a lot of what you're going to be studying at this point is just basic present tense, maybe some past tense, you'll get a future tense, some basic tenses, but you can still practice speaking, which is what pillar two is all about. You're starting to practice the skill of speaking. I am firmly of the belief, if that is your goal, speaking fluency, starting sooner is better than starting later. So again, but that's what I would simply say for these initial stages. Your focus is learn the language. And if you so desire, you could also start with a limited amount of translation practice along to complement that study. Intermediate stage. Etapa número dos. Okay, so now we've left the beginner stage. We're now into B1 and B2 categories. And so at this point, you should know a pretty solid grammatical structure of the language. You're going to have a decent vocabulary. You're advancing. But now you're in a position where you can speak because there's enough variation of the verb tenses and you've looked at the structure, you've studied it enough to where you can start talking. So really the focus of this intermediate stage is pillar number two, which is translation practice. This is where you go deep here because and it's a beautiful thing because it complements what you've learned and continue to learn in this intermediate stage. Let me also clarify the fact that the learning of pillar one will continue in this intermediate stage. It's still very important, and you're going to get into more sophisticated nuances of the language, like the subjunctive mode and more advanced tenses. You'll get into commands and the formal and informal. There's a lot to continue to learn. So pillar number one stays alive and vibrant and very necessary throughout this intermediate stage. But this is where, if I had to categorize the focus of this stage, it's really dialing in on this translation practice. Now we're taking full sentences, okay, in context. That covers a lot of elements, right? So you're seeing not only grammar, but you're conjugating verbs, you're adding vocabulary, your pronoun placement, etc. There's a lot that goes on here, and you're speaking it, and you're starting. This is where you start to rewire your brain to allow you to communicate in another language. Super important. Your focus there is really on translation practice in that intermediate stage. Even as you go to B1, B2, you're going to get pretty darn good at all this stuff, but it's a beautiful and super important way to really, really advance. And again, the translation practice complements the study. It makes it real and it puts it into practice. And no pun intended there. It is practice. It's practice speaking of the knowledge that you gain from pillar one. It's super important. And for the advanced stage, etapa número tres. This is the C1 and C2 levels of speaking fluency. I'm going to focus on C1. C2 is what we call near native fluency. It's very advanced. It's like, imagine a native speaker and their command and their rich vocabulary. A lot of people are going to stall out and spend a lot of time in C1. That's me. That's where I am. What am I doing in this category, though, in terms of the pillars to support my advancement? Primary focus is now conversation practice. And I would say equally as important is I'm still doing the translation practice. Conversation practice, now we're using AI. We're practicing speech. All this translation that we did in pillar two to help us move out of the intermediate stages into more of an advanced stage is still very relevant. That's what helps us to expand, to learn new words, to learn new structures, to understand how natives speak in Spanish, which is so very different than the way we communicate similar thoughts in English. So translation practice, pillar 2, is alive and vibrant in these advanced stages. You really need to do that. That's the engine, I feel like, to continue your advancement. But now we've introduced this new element, which is pillar number 3, which is conversation practice. We are now ready, because of our time in pillar 2, that we can really dial in and start putting this into play. We can have these conversations. We string all these sentences together. And this is the joy, the magic happens. All of a sudden you realize that, yes, I can speak this language and I can communicate thoughts and I can string all this together. You're still doing it by yourself in a quiet, technology-focused environment, but it's powerful. So to summarize, in these advanced stages, particularly what I'm talking about is C1, and actually as you leave B2, there's a crossover here. It's all about conversation practice, really focusing on pillar number 3, and maybe almost as important, you continue pillar number 2. That's what helps you drive and expand upon the conversation. This is what I do today, right now. I'm speaking every day. I'm translating sentences every day. Pillar 3 and pillar 2, and I'm in the advanced stages of C1. To summarize here, beginning stages, you're focused on pillar 1. You gotta learn the language. Intermediate stages, you're focused on pillar 1 and 2. We're now translating. We're focused on translating and not only learning the language, continuing to learn, but putting it into play in the form of speaking practice via translations. Pillar 1 and 2 for the intermediate stages. Advanced stages, it's pillars 2 and 3. We're continuing to work on our translations to advance our knowledge, our vocabulary, and all the pieces that come with it, learning new things. But we're now practicing on an ongoing basis via pillar 3. We're having conversation practice, again, to prepare us for that dialogue with others that comes in pillar 4. So hopefully this at least puts this in perspective. You understand that these pillars, they overlap, and they by design, and you'll do multiple pillars at the same time, depending upon what stage you are and in your advancement of the language. But again, this is intended to take a giant step back and think about how to proceed here and more detail. If you're a little confused on any of this stuff, there's other videos that talk specifically about the stages and these pillars, should you wish to reference those. So hopefully this has been of use. Thank you.